Seems like it's acting up again. All right, is everybody able to see the screen? Okay, perfect. So good afternoon, everybody. So my project is on restorative and cyber ethics, which are two big, how do I say this? Two big issues that I noticed at my school. The lack of restorative justice and the lack of ethics for how to behave on the internet. So let's go ahead and get started. A little bit about me. I am teaching at Georgia Jones Ayers Middle School. I teach 7th and 8th grade comprehensive science and research. So this was my second year there, and they gave me a full plate, and I was able to savor every flavor. Yeah, so this is just me working with some of the younger kids that were visiting our school. But let's go ahead and get started with the main issue. I'm gonna go ahead and play this video. If you guys are able to, please give me a thumbs up if you're able to hear it.
A group of South Florida parents say they're concerned for the safety of their kids at school. Their kids are being picked on and beat up. Now, they shared this video you're seeing right now of a violent brawl. NBC6 reporter Laura Rodriguez spoke to some of those parents who say they've had enough. She brings us the details.
Parents tell us the fights are happening on and off campus. The school is Georgia Jones Ayers Middle School. It is off of Northwest 13th Avenue and 46th Street. And some students tell us they're afraid to come to school. Provided by parents at Georgia Jones Ayers shows middle schoolers throwing punches during and after school.
The kids are worried about it. The kids don't want to go back to school. The kids don't want to come to school.
Katie Mendez and other parents stood outside the school Tuesday afternoon, hoping to meet with administrators to put an end to the violence.
We don't know how we can fix it.
Un grupo de padres pidiendo justicia.
The concerned parents tell NBC6 they have had enough and fear for the safety of their children. They claim a group of students bring knives and other weapons to school.
So always they tell the kids, like, you have to be in the gun with us. If not, we're going to put with the knife in the head or guns. Always they try to make big complaints, big fines, because they want the old kids to be inside the guns.
They punched me in the face while I was waiting in the bus. They carried me and they threw me to the floor.
Miami-Dade County Public Schools tells us that they are aware of a physical altercation that happened last week and tell us in part that parents of students involved opted not to press charges. School administrators spoke to the parents and the incident was handled administratively. They also say students will be disciplined according to the Code of Student Conduct. Reporting in Miami, I'm Laura Rodriguez, NBC6 News.
Okay, so with this video, I just wanted to give you guys a quick view of what we've been experiencing at the school where I'm based at, Georgia Jones Ayers. I've spoken to some teachers, TFA teachers, at some of our meetups, and I heard an interesting nickname for our school. We were called the Fight Club. And I chuckled at first and I was like, what? We're the Fight Club? And they're like, yeah, every other day you guys have a fight. I'm like, I mean, I understand, like, we do have fights, but are we really the Fight Club? Is that what we're really known for? And I know my students, a few of them were actually in this video. I recognize them simply based on their body gestures. Like, my kids are brilliant, my kids are smart. And I'm not saying that as their teacher, I'm saying that because I've got to experience some of the things these kids say, some of the questions. And to see that this is the environment that they were in, and so little was being done about it, not even about the school, but more so about themselves. They lacked accountability for their actions. A lot of them really did not know better. This was the trend that they were seeing. So let's kind of continue. A quick breakdown. So fights have always been a big part of schools. If there's schools, there's kids have tensions, tension leads to fight. A lot of the times it's because kids don't know how to express themselves, but sometimes it can be deeply rooted within other parts of their lives. But the big issue nowadays is technology provides the kids a new platform and a new means to record and share those fights. Nothing spreads faster than a good fight on the internet. We all see memes of people getting hit at the Oscars and things like that. And this is what was happening at the school. They saw TikTok challenges about stealing things in the bathroom, and the first thing they wanted to do was hit devious licks, as they called them. The kids were just they had a strong desire to become internet famous, which was the big problem. So what was the big problem? The big problem was, again, students are recording fights and placing them on social media. This is one of the Instagram pages I personally have found with fights at the school. If you look right here, the one at the top right left-hand corner, that is our school. So many of them are labeled, as they said in the previous video from NBC, the fights are happening both in school and out of school. And the crazy thing is students are recording it just so they can get their 15-minute of fame. And I was wondering in my classroom, and I've had discourse with them like, hey, do you guys know that whatever you put on the internet lasts there forever? But their state of mind was, yeah, it's funny. It's funny though. It's okay, but because it's funny. Look, she got beat up. It's funny. And so I took it upon myself. I was like, you know what? We're already doing restorative justice circles with our team leader. How about I try to incorporate cyber ethics into there, which led to the major part of my project. So let's identify some of the root causes. The first one was the lack of education on social and cyber ethics. One, the kids don't know anything about the internet other than it's fun. They have had an iPad from the moment they're born. I sincerely believe that. And I call them the iPad generation because they know they can break apart a phone for you in ways that you would never think, but they cannot read a 2-sentence page. If the page had 2 sentences, it would be challenging to them. I have kids that will figure out so many different things in technology, but still struggle to just explain their answer. My kids lack education on social and cyber ethics. The next point was limited restorative justice training. Our teachers were not trained how to handle these situations. We didn't go to any PDs where they were like, hey, just so you know, the kids are going to be fighting each other, recording it and spreading it around the internet. This was new to us. We did not really know how to handle it. Does it carry the same as a fight itself, or is that spreading something else? There was really no niche for it. Following that, we also had a lack of accountability and proper disciplinary action, which I touched on. The kids were not held accountable. They did whatever they did, and then they moved on with their lives. One of my students actually had a hate page made of her where she, perhaps it's, I don't know if it was somebody she was in a relationship with or something, but they spread a lot of explicit pictures of her. And as I found it, I was like, okay, I'm not continuing to look at that. I brought it up to one of the teachers and she's like, yeah, this is bad. We need to have a circle with her where we can get her to see that, hey, this is being spread about you, 1, and 2, we have resources that you can use to help you. Finally, the next cause was that we had limited opportunities for community building. Our school was divided. The brawl that you guys witnessed in the video from NBC was actually amongst the Hispanic population, which makes up 55% of the students at Georgia Jones, Ayers Middle School. Amongst them, there are those that speak English and those that are completely ESOL students. Those that speak English were apparently calling the ESOL students wetbacks. And this made them very angry, which led to this massive brawl in the cafeteria, which took a while for us to clean up, not only the cafeteria, but clean up the students that got in the fight. And a lot of them were not being cooperative because they don't want to be snitches. So there's not a strong sense of community. And I was also able to witness that in my classroom, which we'll talk about later. Sorry, just give me a second. Okay, here it is. So my project, the first part of my project was restorative circles. These were small group meetings designed to have all parties involved sit down where they can talk about their feelings, say like, hey, this is where you really hurt me. And our main thing was you must stay silent until it's your turn. You allow the person to speak how you hurt them, and then you tell them how they hurt you. And from it, what we realized is a lot of the kids just misunderstand each other. Some of them think there's rumors being spread about them when there's nothing else. There's nothing being talked about them at all. And this led to many different altercations and even major brawls among student groups. This also created the little clans and cliques that they had, which would jump another student off school grounds. The next part of the project was the social ethics discourse. This was more done in class, and I like to do it in class because I try to integrate it into whatever lesson I'm teaching, just so I can keep it culturally relevant to them. I want to bring in their cultures, like, what do you guys believe? How do you guys feel about this subject that we're learning in science? And how does that relate to what we've been talking about with ethics? Since my main goal in the classroom was never to be just a good teacher, I've always wanted to just be a model for my students. Like, this teacher was an ESOL 2 student who got straight Fs in high school, but somehow managed to try a little harder. And if he can do it and be a teacher, I can do it and be way more. That's what I always tell him. Like, if I can be a teacher, you guys can be way more, because the resources you have, I did not have them. And this is just a little picture showing my goal. My goal was to educate the students on the importance of practicing proper cyber etiquette, as well as the necessary social and emotional skills needed to resolve conflict. They just did not know how to resolve conflict. They were always fighting, always arguing, but they never knew how to listen to understand instead of listening to answer. So the project breakdown started like this. The first step was determining the issue. Whenever we saw anything happening in the school, even a whiff of a rumor between two students, we would try to get on top of it quickly, because if we don't, then we have situations like this. Here are just a few of the pages, again, that I intercepted. There was the picture page where they would take random pictures of teachers and students and post them on the internet. They had the shoes where they would, of course, it's middle school, everybody's trying to be materialistic. Hey, my shoes are better than yours, and let's make fun of this person's shoes or that person's shoes. Sleeping pages and different relationships and all of that. All of these were big issues, which also stem from the fact that students have their phones out. But in the technological age that we are, I personally use cell phones. I integrate cell phones into my classroom when they play different games such as Blue Kid, Kahoot, or even quizzes. The next step was addressing the issue discreetly and directly. I didn't like beating around the bush. I didn't like telling students like, hey, so are you feeling okay? If I knew what the issue was, I would address it directly and I would make it private. I don't want the world to know their business or what they're struggling with. We try to handle it privately and discreetly. The next step was to design a plan for restorative practices. After we talk about what the problem is, we can leave it there. We have to actually say, okay, well, this was the problem, but here's how we can fix it. And we actually came up with the plan with the students so that they can understand I'm accountable for my part of it, and my teachers will hold me accountable. This was the restorative think sheet that we used. We had different tiers because this started off as a way to reduce the amount of referrals that we were receiving from all the fights, since fights were not being de-escalated. Over here, we had like where we would put the student's name, date, and what happened, how it was resolved, if it was resolved, what levels were taken, what steps were taken. And all of these just tied up together to help us overcome the big issue of the fights, the rumors, and the all-around rift within the school community. Step 4 was to reinforce the practices. After we come up with the plan and they start executing it, we want to reinforce it. We give them different rewards. I personally like to just sit down and talk to them like, hey, I've noticed you've matured in this area and I'm proud of you for that. And the kids love that personal relationship because I don't think a lot of them get it. Finally, the last step was to evaluate the growth. If we're reinforcing it, we got to see it happen. We got to have something to go back to, like, this is where you were and this is where you are now. And all of that together will help us strengthen the Georgia Jones community. So just a quick note on the cyber ethics part. There was the intervention, which students are taught the permanence of the internet. So I made it my point to teach them, like, everything you put on the internet stays there. There have been people who has become like depressed over what they did when they were 14. This will come back to you with your job and all of that. Like, how I try to tell them how different means and different ways of spreading yourself on the internet can affect you in the future. Also, we had the videos that they actually recorded were used to show them, like, this was you were the one doing this. Because a lot of the fights, well, for example, the main fight that you guys saw at first, a lot of the students that were able to be pulled out and disciplined were from that video. They basically exposed themselves, and we told them, like, this is what happens when you record and put fights on the internet. Now, the result of that is the majority of the social media pages have actually been taken care of, taken down, and the students are not using that anymore. And I was like a little shocked. And so I started going through to see if there's more pages. A lot of them just became inactive, but I actually did find a new page. Well, not new, but a page that actually had me posted on there. And that is my new course of method. After my kids are finished testing, I will try to sit down with them and have that restorative circle. For the restorative circles, the purpose again was to There are two main goals. Number one was to present students an opportunity to voice their frustrations. They had a lot of emotions built up. They needed to get rid of it. Number two, we try to allow students a chance to mend the wounds that they caused. Students would have arguments just because their friends got in a relationship and then they didn't like the partner. Middle school is very dramatic. It's almost as dramatic as they show in the TV shows. And the effects was there was a higher level of maturity. A lot of the students became more mature. In my classroom, a student once said, we were watching a video on gorillas to show natural selection. And the boy said, they were talking about where are the gorillas from? And the boy said, they're in Wakanda. The little girl got so offended because he's Hispanic and he said the gorillas are in Wakanda that she was like, Mr. Racine, he's being racist. The class blew up out of control and a Hispanic girl told the little boy in Spanish to be quiet because it will only make things worse. Then she took offense to the fact that somebody spoke Spanish and she was like, they're talking about me, Mr. Racine. And I had to stop the lesson. I'm like, you've heard of Karens, right? Sweetie, you sound like a Karen right now. Let's go have the circle. So I sat them down, we spoke about it, and turns out that they had issues, which I believe stemmed from since elementary school. And they were able to mend it out to the point where that same child, her friend brought up, remember when they said Wakanda? And she was like, no, we don't go back into that. That's been handled, we moved on from there. And I was looking at her, I'm like, I'm proud of you because one, you're showing the leader that you are, and two, you're being emotionally mature about this. Finally, there was a reduction in the amount of disciplinary referrals. This was paired up with the fact that to participate in a lot of school activities, students had to have good behavior. Lastly, reduction in school fights, of course, less behavior issues. And this was just some of my kids who were playing outside because I would try to give them areas where they can release that energy, which is not something that we have at our school. They were playing a hunting game where some of them were predators and prey, and they were just showing the different adaptations that they could have. This young child right here, she, in the beginning of the year, I had her in the 7th grade as well, the least motivated students for her work. But the thing is, she's an artistic child. And so I try to pair up the science with art, and she just blossomed. As the other thing I did was hold her accountable to her grades. I would go through all of her grades and tell her, I need you to do this in this class because the teacher's actually giving you the work. You're just not doing it. Same thing for this young man, a similar situation, just a lack of motivation. These are just some of my students. They were working together, just expressing themselves and showing that we can work together as a community. We try to keep everything culturally relevant in my classroom because I try to get them to see that all of science goes back to their cultures and we have to respect each other's cultures in order to succeed and thrive. And this was the young lady I was speaking of, the one that had the outburst, and this was her friend that tried to go back to the situation that she corrected by herself. And she used to be, not to put her out there, but she used to be one of my students that would, like when the drama came, she would be in the front of it. But now she's actually the one holding everybody back and being a leader about it. And I'm just very proud of her for maturing. So here are some of the things I found. I found that students in student development, there was a higher level of maturity. The community, the sense of community was strengthened in the school, where there was not different cliques and different gangs anymore. It was just, we are students. And the fact that their school got put on the news, they were upset. They were like, our school is not that bad, Mr. Racine. We are so mad at this. And I was like, well, it's up to you guys to change the narrative. And they really took that challenge on and thrived with it. They started demonstrating model behavior and leadership, and they found a passion to excel in their work. They just wanted to be better for themselves, not only for people. I also had some places I wanted to expand. The first one was to have a paper trail. The next one was to involve parents. I want to have a paper trail just so I can go back and be like, hey, this is where you said you would improve, but you didn't really improve there. Because that did happen with some of my students. They did not mature as I hoped that they did. And I want to hold parents accountable for what they're teaching their kids at school. So many teachers have told me, we're teaching the kids A at school, but at home they're being reinforced B, which is not good because it's a clash of cultures and that will not stand for anyone. Lastly, we just wanted to provide direct reinforcement and rewards. I want to have a moment where I can take all of the kids that have improved from terrible behavior to good behavior, just give them a chance to be like, hey, this is where we were really proud of you. Here's what you get for continuing your good behavior. And that also goes with reinforcing good behavior from the beginning. That way the bad behavior, the students that are misbehaving, will just on their own shift to the good behavior. So that concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or thoughts to share?
Hey, I just want to commend you for taking on such a huge issue. I know that's no school is immune to all the troubles with technology. So I think it was just incredibly ambitious and really wonderful that you took that on. And the second point I would add is just, I really appreciate you seeing students for who they can be and like having such an asset-based approach, even when they're not always making their best decision in the moment. My question is, this seems like it was a pretty robust system that was like implemented throughout the school. So I'm just wondering, like, what were your strategies for getting buy-in from parents, from admin, from other teachers? Because we heard a lot about how the students are bought in, but I would just love to hear how you bought in the other stakeholders.
Thank you. That's a really good question. So when it comes to teachers, what we did was, it was a team level thing where all of 8th grade team started off with the restorative circles. Now, what I did was that I'm like, why stop at just the circles? Why not start educating them as I teach them science? And so I brought in the social and cyber ethics into the science lessons that I'm teaching, just pairing it up with the best practice standards, just because I want my kids to understand. I had actually one of my students right here, this young boy right here. He told me, I was going through his grades as I did with most of my students. I'm like, Keenan, you're very smart and I know you know the work, but why are you basically at mid-level in all of your classes? And he's told me, well, Mr. Arsen, it's science. I don't think science is applicable to real life. And I took a moment and I was like, yes, it is. And now what I did was I just tried to give them real life situations where whatever we're learning can be applied. And that led to me doing a lot more experiments. In fact, cleaning my classroom will be a mess because I have so many things all over the place. As for admin though, as I said, it started off with the 8th grade team leader doing the restorative justice circles. And I just tried to build onto the work. So they were already involved because they wanted to reduce the amount of referrals. What I would like to do though, in the incentives, I would like for them to be involved and be present, because my kids really do see admin as, to some level, parents. A lot of the kids see them as parents because I feel like a lot of them may not see that at home, or I'm not even gonna make that assumptions, but they need that presence of somebody that is always going through their work, going through and motivating them. I hope that answered it, sorry. Anybody else, or? Okay, thank you. Should I stop sharing, Angel, or? Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, BJ. And let's show some love for BJ's presentation and for his work in the chat. That was awesome. All right. Let's move on to our next presenter for this evening, who is Alejandra, to present on FFEA at the MAC. Alejandra, the floor is yours.
Give me a second. Okay. Are you guys able to view this and hear me? Awesome. Okay. So this is my presentation. I'm just going to the next slide. Oh. Sorry. Okay, so a little bit about me before I begin. This is my second year in TFA. I teach at Dr. Henry Mack / West Little River, and I teach 3rd grade math, science, and social studies. Before I begin, I'm gonna first state my why and my issues, and at the end, I'll go ahead and state my initiative that I took. So the first, I guess, issue I noticed in my school was there was a lack of after school extracurricular opportunities. And I noticed a need for more clubs at my school. There wasn't many. And I know I came in teaching just after the pandemic, so many of those clubs had stopped. But even before then, I was looking at the history, there wasn't many clubs offered at the school. So, and I think clubs are important because they help students develop real world skills, and they can also discover their passions. as they go through elementary to middle school, they can try joining different clubs and saying, oh, I do like this, or I don't like this, and kind of discovering their passions. Because if they don't have the opportunities to do so, they never will. Whether it be an art club or a sport after school, they have to at least be given that opportunity. And also, it offers a safe environment for students. I notice many students anyways have to stay after school because their parents can't pick them up on time, or they say they walk home and I'll like, peek out the corner and I see they're all at the corner of the school just hanging out. So having a club can offer that safe environment they may need just for that 1 hour that their parent needs to, get out of work late or whatnot. So let me go to the next slide. That's why I think clubs should be offered at schools. Then the next issue I noticed was that students are not exposed to career opportunities. So I always think, like I said, I'm gonna mention my initiative at the end. So I'm gonna keep you guessing as to what I did. But the second issue I noticed was that many of them are not given like the discussions, oh, what do you wanna be when you grow up? And they kind of give me like those simple answers that you just hear, oh, I wanna be a doctor, a lawyer. But there's so many other options out there. And a lot of this stems from home. And like, for example, I didn't hear about these opportunities, not because, my mom didn't want to tell me about them or my dad, but it's just the countries that they came from, they didn't really have these opportunities. So I never think it's important to have discussions, and it's never too early. The school I teach at is elementary school, so that's why I think it's good to start early. Also, students need to know their worth and potential. Okay, so the last issue, this is your last clue to guess to what I did, was the education workforce could be a bit more diverse. Upon some research, it states that 74.3% of all teachers are women, while 25.7% are men, and also the most common ethnicity of teachers is white, followed by Hispanic or Black and African American. So it is important to try to make the education workforce as diverse, just like any other workforce. And in order to try to combat these issues I noticed at my school, I decided to sponsor the Florida Future Educators of America Club. There is different levels. I sponsored the elementary level. So now this is where I try to address those three, issues that I noticed from the beginning. And with this club, I was able to bring awareness of career opportunities in education to students. So many students think, oh, education is just being a teacher. But in this club, I explained there are different levels. You can be elementary, a middle, or a high school teacher. You can also be a professor. There's also the administration side of education, principal, assistant principal. There's also school counselors, gifted teachers, ESOL teachers, all these career opportunities that they can, choose from. So in my club, we talk about all this, and they ask me all sorts of questions. Even though they're little, they have millions of questions, but I'm there to offer that knowledge that they may not get anywhere else. In this club, it also helps nurture interest in education. So at this age, in elementary school, I can kind of just talk them into like, why, or the benefits of being a teacher. And they always ask me like, oh, do you like being a teacher? And I'll explain to them, yes, I do. It's a very rewarding experience. Also, it encourages support for teachers and learning. Now, what I mean by this is that many of the students that are part of this club have kind of built, this more like love and appreciation for the teachers. And I'll get the other teachers come back and say, wow, like the student wants to help me all the time now. They want to pass out the papers, they want to clean up, they want to stay during their specials time to help me and watch me grade. Even though it's just watching, they have like the behind the scenes of the teacher. And this club also helps develop model students. Even though it is, a club about education, I also like to teach them like, what are the expectations, and that model students can end up being model teachers. So that, I believe, is it for today. Oh yeah, and some additional benefits of this club is that they can continue with this club into middle and high school, and they can attend competitions and conventions in middle and high school. So in the monthly meetings that I attend, there's also middle school and high school teachers, and it's really nice to see how they can continue with this club and attend conventions and competitions where they actually earn rewards, and they can also earn scholarships in high school. So the main reason why I decided to start this club in elementary is because it seems like it's early, but it's kind of just introducing them to it so that they're ready when they go into middle and high school and know about the club already and say, oh, I want to join this club when I get into middle school or when I get into high school. And then this is just some pictures of stuff we were doing. We also make stuff for the teachers just to give them like little treats for special holidays. Okay, any questions? That was probably fast.
I actually had a quick question, if anybody got one. I don't know if anybody had their hands up. No? Okay. Okay, so I know your project was about like helping the students with the clubs and everything. I actually wanted to start a club myself, so I was just wondering, like, is there any pointers that you would give to like a teacher that wants to have a club? Like, what are some of the things you've learned, the good, the bad?
Sure, yeah, so that's a good question because in my first year, I started during the pandemic, so I couldn't start a club, but I knew I wanted to in my second year. But it was very difficult because I didn't see any clubs since we were mostly virtual. So what I would say is seek out to maybe another school that has this club and kind of get like them as a mentor. And also like, don't be scared because you may think, oh, I don't know if administration want this, but administration is actually thankful that we're taking our time to even sponsor a club and try to make change in the school. So the tips would be kind of like get someone to be as a mentor and not to be scared that they actually want us to do these clubs, to sponsor them.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Alejandra, amazing work. Something that I mentioned in the chat was just around, and I found this super interesting. You talked about how you noticed like students kind of changing their day-to-day behavior because they were working towards something bigger and they wanted to be a teacher, or they were thinking about whatever profession they wanted to join. Can you talk a little bit more about like the changes that you saw in some of the students who were in the club?
Sure. So some of the students are actually in my class and they're also in other classes. In the beginning, I noticed there was like a few of them that tend to misbehave often and kind of didn't have that strong relationship with their teacher. So I feel like this club actually helped build a relationship with me and encourage them to build a relationship with their teacher. So many of the changes I saw was improvement in behavior and also like more initiative to help. And usually when they're busy helping, they'll stay out of trouble. So, instead of like running around, they're going to say, oh, can I help you with this? Can I help you with that? And they're busy. So they're entertained doing something positive. Thank you.
Alejandra, have other teachers come in to maybe try to help you expand the program?
No, this is like the first year that we're doing it, but I would love to have more teachers on board and also have like other teachers present or just do like some sort of workshop with them. That's something that I definitely would like to do. Great question though. I think it's important to have more teachers involved so that they see like the different perspectives, different grade levels, whatever.
Any other questions for Alejandra?
Don't know all go at once, please.
I'll give some teacher wait time. And let's show some love for Alejandra. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. I'm going to prompt us for a super brief break, just so you can step away and grab whatever you need, and we will return back at 6:52.
Hello, just really quick. Can everybody hear me? Can I get a thumbs up if you all can hear me? Clear. Can you all see my screen too? Beautiful. Well, hello, everybody. I am Marcus Torres, a 2020 course member. I teach at Homestead Senior, and my SSP initiative this year was titled Learning to Lead and Leading to Learn. And based off the title, I'm sure you might have a good idea of what my initiative was about, but let's dive into it. If I can click next on the slide. Okay, there we go. So again, I teach at Homestead at the very, very south of Florida. I guess not as south as the Keys, but pretty south. Exit 1 for life, as my students would say. I teach 9th and 10th grade ELA since last year. 2020 corps member, and I graduated from Wabash College in 2020 with a BA in Spanish language and literature and minors in philosophy and rhetoric. And disclaimer, don't know what happened there. Sorry about that, y'all. Let's get back to it. I promise that's me. My hair has gotten a little longer, and I've finally been able to grow some facial hair, so I look a little different now, but that is me. But let's hop into it. Okay, so this year, my project, my primary focus was on providing 9th and 10th grade students the opportunity to grow and develop their leadership skills, their leadership mindset, and also provide an awareness and understanding of the different post-graduation pathways out there. And I did this through curriculum-based learning and support. And funny enough, a lot of what Alejandra had been talking about in her presentation ties into what I was trying to do and what I was trying to focus on with my students, obviously at the secondary level, but there are a lot of ties. So shout out to Alejandra, and also shout out to BJ for your presentations, but kind of an overview, overarching theme of what we had going on this year down at Homestead. And so we begin with the problem, which has to do with students not being able to truly explore and discover what is out there at large, not being able to build upon their leadership skill sets within the classroom specifically. And in addition to this, they're not really afforded the opportunities to set goals for what they want to do long term. I'm sure this may be a theme for many of us, but a lot of my students personally are very short-term thinkers, right? Let's graduate 9th grade. Hopefully we get on to 10th and 11th and 12th. But one of my goals, one of my whys was being able to get my students to think long-term, right? To know that there's a way out, to know that they have potential, right? That all of that, what they do is for a purpose. Because unfortunately, what I've realized and recognized over the past 2 years is that a lot of my students aren't necessarily given the opportunity to be part of an athletic team, to be part of a club, to be part of an organization, which I'll get to in the next slide, but they're not able to do these things, right? So they're at an unfair, they're a disadvantage, which is what I was hoping to sort of bridge the gap with my project. And so here the problem by the numbers, by the data, which we love at NBCPS, but during a pre-survey, about 117 of my students answered to the following questions, which there were more, but these 2 questions were striking. So the first question was asking if they were part of a team, a club, or an organization. And as you can see, an overwhelming majority, 70% of them answered that they were not part of a team, club, or organization. 57.3% of students felt as if they were not given the opportunity, not given the platform to grow or build upon their leadership skills in the classroom. And of those students who stated that they were not part of an organization in school, overwhelming theme had to do with not having the time. A lot of students had to go home to care for siblings. A lot of students, despite being in 9th and 10th grade, which I didn't even realize they were able to work at that age, they have to go home, work, provide for their families. So again, when we talk about equity, there aren't necessarily equitable outcomes when all students aren't given these opportunities to grow in their leadership acumen, which is what I was really striving for. But I think this paints more of a clear picture as to where the problem lies and where the issues lie and where I was trying to bridge the gap. And so my proposed solution, which is still in the works, piloted it actually starting a couple of weeks ago, but there's a bigger picture, is a college and career readiness elective course that is threefold. So phase 1, we have professional development. There's phase 2, we have postgraduation preparation, and phase 3, social emotional behaviors. And again, the reason why I focused with my 9th and 10th graders is because we have one CAP advisor at Homestead, Miss Dixon. She's an amazing lady, but her primary focus is 11th and 12th graders to get them graduation ready, right? To ensure that they have the requisite needs to graduate on time, that they've taken the ACT, SAT, but there's not as much focus on the 9th and 10th graders, which is, again, where I was trying to bridge that gap. Also being a 9th and 10th grade teacher, I felt that, I could help fill some of those needs. But the course that I'm trying to eventually come full circle, right, is threefold and broken down. Here's what we have at a glance. So phase 1, first part of the year, right, we dive into professional development where students are beginning to be able to identify what it is they truly like, right, where their values are, what are their leadership styles, what are their learning styles, and this will be done through a Myers-Briggs assessment. We then begin to goal set, right, set those long, know what their why is, so they're always striving for that objective, that long-term outcome that they want to achieve. And also tied in, we have some career exploration and PD for students. Phase 2, then we begin with our post-grad preparation, where they're identifying college and career interests, schools, technical careers that they may have passions for. Diving in, moving on, we go into the application process, introducing them to writing personal statements, writing statements for scholarships. And then third, again, more exploration on the post-grad end of things. And then third really is the application of the learning at the beginning of the year, which comes from the PD and the post-grad phases of things. So where they begin to apply what they've learned and can learn how to speak, present, to research. Also a possibility that I've been in talks with my coaches and staff at school, a possibility for gaining different technical certifications, which puts them a step ahead of the game at the end of the day. And so just a brief overview of what we have going on. And then we dive into the challenges because we find those, but we overcome them as teachers. And here are the 3 main challenges. So 1, the lack of accessible resources and personnel. As I was stating earlier, we have one CAP advisor who deals with about 2,000 students, which just isn't enough. Second, we have district and school-wide support. I know, and we all know, I think, that we are very testing focused. So when a new curriculum, a new program gets introduced that isn't necessarily testing based, it can be a little hard to get buy-in from staff, from other teachers. And then third, instructional timing, which I came to find what was a big challenge for me, trying to introduce a pilot of this in my class while also having to teach ELA. It was hard at times because just the timing wasn't always there. But here are 3 main challenges. Dive into the results, which will come in the form of testimonials from my students. And first up, I'll give you all about 30 seconds to read each. But first up, we have Aaron from my 5th period, great student. But here we have this theme of leadership, allowing him to open a new business, become a leader of a company, being introduced to what he may want to pursue in college, which was an overarching theme of all 3 testimonies that you'll see today, right? But just this understanding of what is truly out there, because at this point, and based again off my 2 years, there was a lack of that, as we will see. And then we have Laquanda from 6th period, and then Damien from 3rd period as well. So in Laquanda, we see this understanding and this realization of responsibility, of being able to listen to others, understand their input while trying to lead groups. And then with Damien, we have this idea of guiding others, right? The importance of leadership, understanding what may lie ahead and how to prepare for that, whether that's how to pay for college, right? What courses to take, what major to major in. And then I'm gonna move on. And so here are the hopes for the future of this initiative. One, first and foremost, a successful implementation of this initiative as a course, because again, this was a pilot that I started 3 weeks ago. Because of testing, where I wasn't able to integrate it as effectively as I wanted to. 2, school-wide buy-in. It takes a village, as they say, it takes a village and support from all. And then 3rd, the longevity of it, right? Whether I be in a classroom teaching a course as this, or if someone comes down and begins to instruct it themselves. I think this is an initiative that is needed, especially for those in the secondary level, in order to really be able to understand and grasp what it is that they want to do, right? What passions do they have? What do they want to do with their futures? Because they have the potential, but it's a matter of them identifying and being able to apply what they've learned into the real world. And so without further ado, I am here for questions. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you, Marcus. That was a really good presentation. Can you elaborate a bit on the career explorations and the professional development? Like, what kind of tools did you use for career explorations with your students?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things, again, so Vanessa, the past couple of weeks have been a sort of a pilot just because of timing, as I mentioned. But we used the Myers-Briggs assessment so they can identify what their leadership styles are. Because one of the questions that I actually had on the survey, the pre-survey, was about them being able to describe how they lead others. What does leadership mean to them? How do they learn? And a good majority, I would say more than half of these students, didn't know what 1, leadership was, or 2, what their leadership styles were. So I think the biggest sort of part of the past couple of weeks has been them exploring through Myers-Briggs personality test, through different college sites, right? Exploring majors, exploring minors, exploring courses they can take, exploring technical careers. That's been a big portion of the past 3 weeks.
Thank you. Appreciate that answer.
No problem.
Marcus, I'm not surprised that your project did such a good job of elevating student voice, since you already do an amazing job of that in your classroom. But I was wondering, and also just the whole time I was thinking like, oh, students probably felt so seen, like being asked for their opinions, being asked about their aspirations. So I thought that was incredibly powerful. My question is, what like trends did you notice in terms of like career aspirations or college aspirations, and like maybe what was interesting, what was surprising, and what did the data say in terms of like their goals?
Yeah, I think the level of motivation from point A, and that's a great question, Olivia. Thank you for that. But I think the motivation from when we started to where we're at now has increased dramatically. right? I had students at the beginning of this, right? One of their assignments was to write a letter to their future selves. And I had a good number of students come up to me and say things along the lines of, Mr., what if I don't know what I want to do? What if all I want to do is graduate? And so the motivation and the curiosity too has been overwhelmingly increased, right? Them realizing that there's way more out there in the world, like than what Alejandra was saying, than being a doctor, than being a lawyer, right? The curiosity has skyrocketed, which I've appreciated a ton, right? Their ability to think critically, not about just the material of the class, but right, what future lies ahead for them, what they can do with their potential that they have. So I would say motivation and curiosity have been big trends that I've seen since the onset.
Not a question, but I just wanted to point out, I really like that you actually use different testimonies and different quotes from your students in your presentation. I just feel like, as I think it was Olivia that said it, just allowing your students to be seen, that just reinforces and makes it obvious, like this is not something that is, I'm doing it for the project, or I'm gonna make myself do this. This is like natural. At least it's looking very natural to me, at least. Just giving your students a voice and using that voice to show them like, hey, you have it, use it. It's influential. That's pretty cool.
Appreciate you, BJ. Thank you for that.
I have a question. Oh, does someone else want to go? So you're working with high school students, which are obviously like graduating, and it's super important for them to start thinking, but how early would you suggest that these sorts of conversations happen, or like what would you like to see younger students doing when it comes to career stuff?
Yeah, I think as early as possible, as early as possible, Julieta, that's a really good question. Again, tying it back to Alejandra's presentation and her project and her initiative, I think the earlier they realize what is out there, the earlier they can start to prepare or even, further explore what they can do and start getting the certifications or, further exploring and navigating these different programs that are out there, so they can see if they like it, but they can also see if they don't like it. And if they don't like it, they can move on to something else that's out there. But I think the biggest thing is allowing them to really explore what's out there, because there's so much, especially nowadays in this digital era, there's so much out there. But a lot of these students aren't being exposed early enough. And like I said, I teach high school, but you would be surprised by how many 9th and 10th graders don't know, right, what majors they can major in or what careers, are out there for them to begin working after high school. So I think as early as possible.
I have a question. You've spoke a lot about how successful it was this year and how you've implemented it after testing. Do you have plans to start earlier next year? Or if you're not going to be there, do you have plans to help somebody keep it going next year?
Yeah, definitely. That's part of the expansion. And I wish I would have been able to start it earlier this year, but because of testing, I wasn't able to get it fully fleshed out and where I wanted it to be. But yeah, this is something that would be integrated, as soon as the year starts.
Marcus, you had mentioned, one of the barriers is that, a lot of the students at times, even if the school had, after school activities, a lot of times they cannot participate because they have priorities at home. In the whole process of this, were you able to assess if there's a time, whether it's lunch or morning or somehow where it doesn't interfere with, the school testing, since that's a priority to create a club where individuals can come together and talk about this, individuals outside of your classroom?
Yeah, so what I actually did this year was I was integrating it into the last 30 to 40 minutes of class that we had after test prep. So the first part of class, we have a 90-minute class. So the first 60 minutes would be, right, test preparation. And the last 30 to 40 would be all career exploration, professional development, right? Really just getting these students to discover. Because again, we really hit the first phase because it was the end of the year, because of timing, because of testing, all these barriers I mentioned. So we only really hit the first phase. But again, part of the expansion is all 3 phases. So at my school, we have a critical thinking class. That's an elective course that most 9th and 10th grade students take. And so something that I proposed to my principal is having this curriculum, integrated into that class. So they get a full 90 minutes of being able to focus on leadership development, right? Career exploration, social emotional skills and behavior, so that ELA can focus on ELA, while also tying in, right? Because a lot of these skills, these learnings, this curriculum can be intertwined, right, in what we do. But a class or an elective that could fully flesh out, this course and give the students the time they need to really explore and apply is something that I'm hoping for the future.
That's a really great idea, to bring in this curriculum in another course that students have to take. I hope that there's a buy-in for that from the principal.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Awesome. Well, let's give it up for Marcus in the chat. Marcus, thank you so much for sharing your awesome presentation with us.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. And without further ado, let's move on to our last but not least, our final presentation of the night by Julieta. She is going to be presenting on the After School Talents program. Julieta, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you all see my screen? Yes. All right, so today I'm going to be presenting my project that was piloting Talents, our after-school extracurricular program at Santa Clara Elementary. A little bit about me. I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, but I was raised here in Miami. And I'm also a product of MDCPS K-12 schools. I later moved to Boston to get a bachelor's in philosophy from BU. And now I'm a teacher at Santa Clara Elementary. I taught first grade, self-contained my first year. And now I moved on to 4th grade math with some science, social studies, all that, but mainly math. And I'm also a former ceramics instructor and current program director for the Talents program, which is my project. All right, so during this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the problem that I saw in my first year and kind of the brainstorming that went on, then the solution or the actual project, our results, and then going forward, what the program is going to look like, hopefully next year and for years to come, hopefully. All right, so the problem. I'm sure this is something many of you in here can relate to, but my first year, I noticed a lot of mental health issues with my students that surprised me. I kind of expected because of the pandemic and everything that's happening, but how much at such a young age surprised me. This is a statistic that I found doing some research with a survey that they surveyed educators in Title I schools and reported that 53% of students were struggling with mental health issues, yet only 20% of the teachers, nearly 1,000 teachers educated, surveyed, felt prepared to support those students. And so, yeah, so that was something that stuck with me the most my first year, with a few students in particular, noticing that they were kind of stuck in this toxic cycle, coming in with emotional needs, but also academic needs. And those two things would sort of bounce off each other, and unmet emotional needs would make the academic needs greater, and then the overwhelming pressure that the teachers and students face because of testing scores and getting them onto grade level when many of them were 2-3 grade levels behind, it kind of would all like snowball, and on top of this, I felt like we lacked the mental health resources to support our students outside of the classroom. Having one counselor for nearly 500, 600 students was just not meeting their needs. And on top of this, the biggest thing was I felt like for an elementary school, there was simply not enough play, exploration, expression, and joy. And this kind of caused a resentful feeling with the students in school. And I feel like growing up, playing in elementary school, having fun, enjoying my time there, it's developmentally necessary at that age. And so that was something that stuck with me, and I felt like something had to be done about it. And it also got me thinking about myself as a kid. I was like a super ADHD kid that kind of sat in the back and played with my pencils in my like own little imaginary world. Or when I grew up, it was more like talking to my friends and blah, blah. So I didn't have those really meaningful connections with teachers that I hear some other core members talk about, like, oh, this teacher changed my life, or because I wasn't able to cultivate that relationship in class because I didn't feel like I was the ideal type of student. So I kind of kept to myself. But luckily, I was really active in other activities after school. I was involved in Taekwondo for a few years, and field hockey and photography. Those are like my main hobbies. And my coaches and mentors in those activities really filled in those holes. I feel that that relationship I couldn't get with my teachers. And that was extremely important to me. The soft skills that I learned from all of those activities are still with me today. Taekwondo taught me things like confidence, mental strength, discipline. Field hockey taught me how to work in a team, how to lift as I climb. Photography taught me how to tell stories and engage with the world around me. And so these are all things that I still feel like they shaped me today, and I wouldn't probably be here if it wasn't for those relationships and those activities. And the research supports that. There's a ton of research around extracurriculars and how much they affect a child's mental health. And so I felt like we needed a little more joy outside of, programs that brought tutoring or intervention and, pulled kids out of art and PE, and I wanted to bring something. At the time, I was taking some ceramics classes with my aunt, who's an artist, and she was really into that, and I found it to be a very therapeutic activity. So that was initially my first idea, which brings us to the solution. It eventually turned into the Talents After School program. I'll talk to you guys a little bit about how it went from the initial idea to this. But today we have this program that we provide all of our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students with free opportunity to partake in 2 activities throughout the school year. We have ceramics, photography, painting, chess, music, cheerleading, sports, and SEL workshops. It's this outside organization called Girls Inc. that also joined in the program. And right now we have over 100 students. We have activities throughout the year. We had a mid-year talent show, and we're now prepping for our end of the year talent show. A little bit about the timeline of my project and kind of how my role evolved throughout the year. So as I said, to approach the problem in the beginning of my 2nd year, I offered to teach an after-school ceramics class to bring students a therapeutic artistic outlet that I found to be very helpful. That was, my initial idea when I joined SSP, and I came and I pitched that to my admin in August. There we were talking, and there was talk about some funding that might come our way. And by October, we received additional funding from the district and were able to open 7 more extracurricular activities to complete the program that we now call Talents. Throughout the year, I got more involved in the program, apart from just teaching ceramics, and in turn, I grew a lot more passionate about its impact. I got to witness the pilot from the very beginning, and so I was able to reflect throughout the year on the implementation and identify our areas of strength and weaknesses. And so by March, I created a pretty lengthy improvement plan outlining areas for growth and innovative ideas that I thought could help the program. I then presented it to my administration. And then by April, I began transitioning from my former role as the ceramics instructor to my new role as program director for the rest of this year and then next year, because I'm doing a third year. And so that brings us to this next phase that we're going into, which is getting ready for the next school year, where I plan to implement all those things I outlined and hopefully even more ideas. I'll get into that like a little later, but that's the next phase. All right, and now our results. For the most part, I feel like way to summarize our results is just a more joyful, empowered, and connected community, which was the initial goal. So I'm really happy with that. I do think that we achieved that. And to demonstrate that, I tried to interview a few students and I was going to put together a little video, but because of time, I felt like it was going to be a little too much. So I instead, I'm going to show you guys some highlights from those interviews. So this is Regine. She is currently in music and cheer. But she's also done ceramics and I think photography. And she's actually one of my students. So I'll speak a little bit about her after these.
Okay, so what are some of your favorite memories from this past year and after school?
My favorite memory are when we had our show and for cheerleading and for music.
All right, and so that was a fun performance. Why was it your favorite memory?
Because for cheerleading, we got to like do the stunts and stuff and we was in front of all our parents. And for music, it was like we were like playing the instruments, and I got to help everyone set up.
All right, and then when I asked her what she would be doing if she wasn't in after school, she'd be like, I'd probably be in bed looking at TikToks, and I thought that was pretty relatable. So I chose Regine to share with you guys because she was a student that I have in my class, in my math class, and I've had her since the beginning of the year. So I got to witness her change throughout the year. I remember that before I actually had her as my student, I knew about her because she was involved in some drama from last year. And she's got a big personality. She, loves to share the tea with her teachers and, very much of a leader. But in the beginning of the year, we kind of had some issues where that leadership was sometimes, would distract the class. It's kind of like all eyes are on her and what she says kind of goes. So in the beginning, that leadership, I feel like wasn't being put to the best use. And we had a conversation about her during a lunch. I had her come eat lunch with me and we spoke a little bit about that. I told her, the class needs to be a little bit more focused and I'd love for you to help me out with that. And I gave her a little more responsibility. And when after school started, I was like, you need to get involved. She's a dancer. I was like, you need to get involved in cheerleading. And I feel like we made a lot of progress throughout the year and kind of using aspects that were already hers, characteristics that were hers, but being put to a really good use. And I've seen so much growth in her. I'm very proud of her.
Okay, so what
Now, this is another student, Jaden. He is involved in chess and sports. Currently, we don't have chess anymore, so I think he's in music, yes. So he did chess, sports, and music. And this is a little excerpt.
All right. So what feelings come up when you think about after school? How do you feel?
I feel good, especially like the sports.
In sports makes you feel good. Why? Why do you think?
Because I get to run around, feel free.
All right, that's nice. That's always.
So Jaden too is one that I chose because I feel like I've really seen him flourish throughout the year. In the beginning, he was really shy and I didn't know how, colorful his personality was. And throughout the year, I've noticed that he's not just a good student, he's an artist and he's a musician, and he was terrible at chess in the beginning, and then now he's good and he loves to play, and he's just grown so much out of his shell, and I feel like that's in part because of after school.
All right. So
two more students right here. We have Jasmine, who's in cheer and ceramics, and Brianna, who's in ceramics and dance. Jasmine, like Regine, kind of gave me a similar answer. She said that she feels happy that she's in after school, because if she was at home, she'd probably just be lying in her bed and watching TV. And cheer, she thinks, is a better use of her time. This is Brianna.
And then what would you be doing if you weren't in after school? What would you be doing when you go home?
I'll be like kicking the floor, being boring, and be like, oh my God, I wish I could be in after school.
All right.
I promise I didn't put her up to that. That was her genuine answer.
And then what would you?
Okay. All right, so I kind of wanted to show you guys those videos to just get a feel of the vibes really that are in after school. They have a good time. We all do. I'm so happy to be in it. It's changed my relationship with the school. And I hope that translated in the videos. Also, that's not to say that there weren't some challenges. We definitely had some challenges. It's a pilot year, and some of it was a little bit improvised. When the funding came, we opened the program real quick. And so there were some holes that definitely need to be filled. Our main areas for growth, I think, are organization and student accountability. So there were some scheduling inconsistencies because we have to give 2 activities, and the way we were doing it is an A-B schedule, but the issue with that is that it changes every week. So we have an A week where we would start with, if your A activity is dance, you start with dance. But if your B activity is ceramics, then the next week you're going to start with ceramics. And so that inconsistency would throughout the year cause a lot of confusion. And I'm now looking to recruit new staff. And so that was an issue too, because, you're working with other people's work schedule. It's not just teachers in the school teaching. So that's something that I identified, needs to change. There's also messy transitions. We had all the kids in after school go to the cafeteria during dismissal, and the teachers were at dismissal. So the cafeteria just got kind of wild, because I would say like half of 3rd, 4th, and 5th participates in after school, which is awesome, but gets kind of crazy. And there was a lack of course planning. We kind of tried to get instructors as we went throughout the year. So the courses weren't laid out or planned for a whole year. They were kind of just, going as they go. And the other area for growth was student accountability. We had certain commitment issues, students choosing a class and then wanting to change class and change again. And, some of the students weren't really reaping the benefits of the activities because of those commitment issues. Misconduct, we had that be a problem, students walking around and just kind of, there was a vibe of I could do whatever I wanted after school, which is good to feel free, but not so good to misbehave. And insufficient motivation. Sometimes the kids would, be in ceramics and be on their phones, and so these are areas that I definitely want to work on for next year and kind of motivated the improvement plan. All right, so now going into that, I don't know how I am on time because I could speak on this improvement plan for literally hours. It's all I've been thinking about for the past few months. But here's a little brief outline. So these are the main areas of my improvement plan. First, I want to recruit more staff. I want to target college interns, possibly open up an internship program where I would support them throughout the process of teaching a class. And the reason I wanted to target college students is because I feel like a similar appeal to that TFA has, but you can get really passionate, determined, driven people that are very early on in their career. So they're not restrained to, a 9-to-5 schedule. And so they're available more during those hours, but still bring high quality expertise and passion. And there's also a shared interest, and they want to do the best they can on that project in order to help their careers. And I also really want to recruit high school mentors and have volunteers come from affiliated high schools to help out the instructors, and also just serve as mentors for the students and kind of have them be, good students that are also involved in activities and show our students what's possible. I also want to open up a ton of new classes. I have a billion ideas. One of my favorite ideas that needs to happen is opening a communications class. We currently have photography, and that's kind of hard to do sometimes just because how many photos around the school can we take? And so I wanted to transform that into a communications or content creation class that would be used in a more practical way. I want our students to learn how to run our social media, and they're all on TikTok, but they make these terrible TikToks. And so I want, to hone in those interests and teach them skills that are applicable and that we can use to promote our own program. Some other classes that we have in the works are a fashion class. I'd love to get a coding class. We're interviewing a soccer coach. Miami Ballet Studios reached out to us to do a once a week activity. And then another favorite of mine is DIY Fridays, where we could do DIY activities around the school to beautify our school. After that, we have improved systems. So this is kind of like targeted at the accountability issue and the motivation issue. So I want to implement more systems of accountability and motivation. And in part, this would be with requiring each class to have a syllabus where students would take that home if they want to join that class and read it with their parents and sign an agreement of, these are the expectations. These are the rules that, if you break or you can't meet these expectations, then, the program is not going to work out for you. Just to have some more accountability and also outline what they're working towards to get that motivation. I want them to know, by the middle of, by November, by December, I will learn this, this, and this, and have incentives that are introduced in the syllabus. So for example, the most outstanding soccer player is going to get, tickets to watch this game or something like that along those lines. But have them knowing what they're working towards to get a little bit more motivation involved. Then we have community outreach. I want to work more with the community that we have around us. We'll be working with universities and high schools if we do this with the college interns and the high school mentors, but I also really want to involve local businesses. I would love to be able to host our talent show instead of in our cafeteria, have it be, at a cultural center or a museum or even a restaurant. It does, but just to get the community involved so that they know what's happening and they can have a part in it too. And then we have the impact tracking. A little bit of this is gonna be through the social media that the kids will learn to run, to track, our accomplishments and what's happening and keep the community involved. I also would like to collect data from the very beginning to show the growth or the impact that the program has. For example, we had X amount of students who got into magnet programs. I would love to double or triple that, and if X amount of art submissions were sent out to competitions, I'd love to double that, triple that, whatever. But, have a consistent tracking of certain data to show the importance of the program and the effect that it's having on the school. And all of this is kind of to keep the program alive and to ultimately secure continued funding, because unfortunately the grant that we have now is only temporary. It was a grant given to us for 2 years, meaning next year is going to be the last year that it's guaranteed. And so all of this is to basically make the best use of this opportunity and create a program that's undeniably valuable so that we can then find more support, more funding from our community stakeholders, which is why the community outreach and all of this is so important. All right, and so now that brings me kind of to the end. And I would love for anyone that's interested to get involved. There's so many different ways that you can get involved. One easy one is to follow us on Instagram. There's currently only one post, but that's because I still need like all the families to sign media release forms and whatever, so we could do all these ideas that we have planned. But that's going to be growing next year. So if you follow us early on, you get to see that growth. Also, just spread the word. If you like this presentation, you like the idea, tell people about it, and share connections. A huge part of the community outreach, is starting right now. If you guys know anyone or any local businesses near Alapata or Wynwood, that would like to get involved, please share their contact or tell them about it, and they could reach out to me if they like. And donations. We're not yet looking for, the big funding donations, but there are restrictions to the way that the grant can be used. For example, I would love to get field trips involved in this, just to show kids what they could work towards and the excitement involved in being active with these activities. But we can't use grant funding for that. We can't use it for incentives. And so there's little things here and there that the support is always appreciated and would be put to good use. All right, and so that brings me to the end. I had to include that I use this adorable template from SlidesGo. And if you have any more questions that can't be answered today or anything else you'd like to know, you can email me or text me or connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, you can ask now.
I just really like how you involve like your students directly. Again, like you guys do that so well. You and Marcus, like you guys did an awesome job with that, Marcus, with quoting them. And you had like a whole interview. I'm gonna start copying that. No cap, I'm gonna copy that, but maybe have it with my students too. But the question I actually had was, have you tried partnering up with like other activities similar to yours? I've heard of Guitars Over Gun. I know they're not exactly the same thing, but like, have you thought about like partnering up with them perhaps, or any other organizations where you can spread out more and, develop more?
Yeah, so guitar, I went to the join Zoom, the presentation yesterday, and I asked her if it was working with elementary schools, and they're not. So this is just for elementary, which I think is underrated. I feel like a lot of times elementary schools don't have clubs or activities. And at least in Title I schools, where they have so much intervention and being pulled from their activities and whatever, they're missing on this developmentally like crucial part. So yeah, unfortunately, Guitars Over Guns does not have elementary school, but if you have any other programs, I'm looking into that right now.
No, for sure. I'm gonna ask around and find out if there's anything. Just please remind me. You could use the main chat that we use on GroupMe if you're still on that. For sure, let me know. For sure, let me know, because that's a really cool project. I just like, if you guys could partner up with anyone or anything that's doing something similar, I could really blow it out the waters,
Appreciate it.
I just loved seeing the pride in your students during the interviews. And I think it's just like really clear evidence of when you give students something to say yes to, like the joy and the that can come from that. So really nice job with that. Particularly after COVID, I think they needed that joy and engagement. So that was wonderful to see. I'm just wondering how you scaled it so quickly, because you said you had like over 100 students. So like, yeah, how did you get so many involved so quickly after, particularly after not being in school for all of last year?
So the funding that we received from the district was really generous, honestly. And so we were able to hire as many teachers as they wanted to sign up. And then it just got moving quickly. I think it's just really something I didn't even get the chance to speak on, but it's really valuable for the families too. They're able to work until more normal hours, because it's not easy sometimes picking your kid at 4 or 3. And so I think it just worked. There was clearly a need that was already there, because once the program opened, it's been packed since.
Julieta, awesome job. I also taught 4th grade. And so I'm thinking about like, when you said that there is an element of choice, right? That they like got to choose too. like I'm automatically panicking because I remember whenever, you know, I was in the classroom with my fourth graders and there was a choice for them to choose something, like how that would go down. And I feel like I was never really good at setting them up for that. So how are you able to do that?
To be honest, they got the chance to like dabble in different activities. And that is something that was great, I think is great, but we're trying to figure out how we're going to go about that for next year, because it ended up leading to those commitment issues because we didn't set those boundaries. What I'm thinking of doing for next year is having the first month of after school be a trial period where they can try different activities for like a week, you know, and then the next week try a different A and B, just to get a feel for what's out there and what provokes them more once they get involved. But yeah, so probably like around a month and then have them commit to the activity.
Thank you, most importantly, for, doing the ask. A lot of times that is just what we need to hear, from whether it's external stakeholders, whether it's staff. We may not know exactly what may be needed in the classroom. So being vocal and just letting us know what is needed really helps. So, being in development, just I'm already thinking of all the different things that we could possibly do, how we can collaborate with other community partners. And so, it's what I've told, Matt and Olivia in the past. It's like, always ask. And the answer may be, no, it can't happen. I don't know. We'll see. But sometimes you get a yes, and we've gotten some yes along the way. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this. And I honestly cannot wait to share this with some of our partners.
Yay, that makes me so excited. Thank you.
Yeah, and that goes across the board with everybody. I'm so glad that I've been able to participate in hearing everybody's projects.
Thank you. Any other questions? We could close off. All right, thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you so much, Huli. Awesome. Well, let's close out. And thank you so much to all of our participants this evening, BJ, Alejandra, Marcus, and Huli. Y'all's presentations were incredibly inspiring. And like I was saying at the beginning of this call, I feel like it's tough to be on a Zoom at 6 o'clock, but y'all made it, as enjoyable as it could have been. And I'm walking away from this space feeling inspired and energized about the work that you all are doing. So thank you so much. Feel free to reach out to our participants, Nina, Vanessa, Ryan, and thank you all so much for being here as well. Feel free to reach out to our participants and connect with them if you'd like to learn more. I'm also going to drop a survey for our attendees who came this evening to fill out. And if our participants want to drop their emails in the chat so that y'all can connect with them, feel free to do that as well. But I'll drop that survey link, and thank y'all so much for being here tonight. Good night.